Hi everyone, this is Richard Carlton. I'm here today with,
Nicholas Orr from Goya.
and Nicholas is all the way from Australia, right?
Yeah, Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah, so someplace I want to visit someday. And Nick's team there does amazing amount of really cool FileMaker products. Specifically, BaseElements is like this famous word we hear in the FileMaker community, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about your
well-known.
products. What products do you folks have?
We have two paid products and two open source products. BaseElements is one. We have another one, Refresh FM, which is an updater solution. The two open source ones are a plugin, which is actually started out of BaseElements, just a little set of toolbox files that we needed, and has become a much bigger thing. And REST FM, which was a REST component for FileMaker Server before FileMaker did their own. So, yeah, those four.
So today we're talking about your BaseElements product, which we use, which I've used for many years and I love, which is basically an analysis tool for your FileMaker solution.
Yeah, the way I describe it to people who sort of don't understand the concept is, imagine you walked into a massive tall office building and you were an electrician and you wanted to know where all the wires go behind the walls. Well, BaseElements would be like telling you where every wire is behind the walls without having to pull the whole building apart. So it does that for your FileMaker solution. It tells you everything that's in the solution and where it's all connected, all the parts and all the things that are wrong, all the things that aren't being used anymore, and lets you do some really good cleanup on your solution.
Yeah, I use that a lot. We use it with Starting Point before we ship a new version. Sometimes we'll have fields or scripts or layouts that we built, maybe even as a test, but they're not part of the product and they're almost like orphaned. And your product will find kind of the non-reference things that aren't being used and give us a punch list, or it'll find errors in scripts and give us a punch list. So we go through the punch list to make sure everything's pretty clean before we ship our product. So you've got the new version here. This is for FileMaker 16?
Yes.
Tell us about this.
So this is BaseElements 16, so obviously enhanced with all the new functionality that's in 16, but we worked a lot as well on showing where things are related. So for example, this particular field that I'm going into here, it's not used anywhere. Items used unreferenced, so it doesn't exist anywhere. This one's referenced by, so we've got all these sub areas now that we didn't have before. So showing their objects, it's used on two particular objects. This is a layout field. It's on the layout called form view, and it's a field. So I can then look specifically at that object and say exactly where that is.
Now, this is much improved over the last version, at least visually. This is a lot easier to look at.
Yeah, we didn't have that level of detail. I mean, the level of detail was there. It was done via pull-down menus instead.
Right.
So it was a little bit trickier to get that information out, and just by having it showed here to say,
Yeah,
okay,
this
these
is
are
a
the items
vast
used
improvement. I love this. This
and
is
the
great.
fields. It gives you the numbers straight away. You can tell exactly where things are used. So the other big change we did in 16 was to pull this location out. So finding objects on layouts now is obviously much harder. There's a little bit of detail that helps us there with the layout inspector, the object inspector, but actually locating things. So this is an example. So this particular field is located at these coordinates, but if you had objects that were sort of a tab panel, or you had tab panels within tab panels, for example, this would tell you the parent object and any child object. So you can look at a tab panel, for example, and say, where's that used?
So I guess that brings up a question that I have, is that does BaseElements do the analysis? It does a DDR. For those of you who don't know what a DDR is, that comes out of Pro Advanced, right?
Yep. So in the Tools menu, Database Design Report, and you generate that as XML and just save that and hit Create. And then we import that in. So we process that. You go to the home screen, click on Import, and select the file that you want to import, the summary file. And then once you've imported that, it brings all of that data in. And the processing that we do is actually really handy. Being able to then go through that data in lots of different ways and process it and pull useful information out. Things like where you're using variables. So variables are used in calculations, or they can be used on layouts, or they can be used in a set variable step.
Could you get a punch list of all the variables in the solution?
Yeah, so that is every variable that's used in this solution.
Okay, because people are always losing track of variables.
Exactly.
And then did we use this name somewhere? And if we did, and if we use the name twice, that's gonna, in their globals, they could run into each other and crash. That'd be bad.
You'd be able to look at this list straight away and say, hang on, even though this one is window, later on I've called it Windows. Yeah, so every variable that's used in the solution and then where it's used. This one's used, window names is used in 3 places in those 3 script steps.
Exactly. Very cool. So you can get Base Elements from your website, which
Yep.
is
BaseElements.com.
baseelements.com.
Yep.
And so if you have any additional questions about Base Elements, it's a product that we highly recommend. RCC uses it. And like I said, as we get close to shipping new versions of Starting Point, we use this as a tool to back check to make sure we're all clean. And then we're always shocked to find all the little errors and scripts and things where we reference a script references a layout, and then we get rid of the layout, and then you get the red error message that says, oh, by the way, these scripts have errors.
Yeah.
And so this tool is fantastic for giving my team a punch list to go through and to find those things and to clean them up.
Yeah.
Really great tool. So visit baseelements.com and check out that product. And we'll catch you next week.